Peter, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. I'd like to say that it's come time for us in the West to turn our backs on America. And when I mean turn our backs, I mean to tell the Americans to chuck the bases out, for us to actually create our own reserve currency with the Europeans. We only had the present system of dollar dominance because of a system called Bretton Woods system that was created in 1944 that gave America the reserve currency status of the world. We could easily go in partnership with our European colleagues, create a reserve currency of the world. There are plenty of places around the world that would rather use a new beefed up euro, and I'm sure the Middle East would bite our hands off at the moment. America's power is dominated because we allow them to have that power. We could easily reverse that. There are very large countries in the Western world who are democracies who could come together and basically chop America off by the knees. They're in so much debt. They require the reserve currency status. If we want to actually make America heal, make them heal by basically turning around to them and say, look, you're not going to have the reserve currency status any longer. And we, the Europeans, you're not in line with our values any longer.
Well, that is actually, unintentionally, you've made me work out why they're so keen to promote the far-right parties in European countries, of course.
Yeah,
because possibly as a caution against or a fear of what you're describing. A completely united Europe could actually go toe-to-toe with a rogue United States, even if it was supported by Vladimir Putin.
The EU together is the size of the American economy, all right? We have 500 million consumers compared to 346 consumers in America.
How feasible is this? I mean, Starmer, I wonder whether Starmer is glad or sad that he's got a date in the diary next week.
I think Keir Starmer is doing some of the right things at the moment. He's at least standing up to him. But I think we need to go further. Brexit was the biggest coup for Vladimir Putin that you could possibly have. We were always in Europe to stop Europe becoming a dominant force. The reasons why the special relationship exists in some respects is to stop Europe coming together as a realistic force to dominate dominate America. Just as America did to us in 1914. The Federal Reserve came into being in 1914, which is basically where they harmonised debt right across the actual states. Within 4 years of actually doing that system, it became one of the most dominant currencies in the world, overtaking the sterling. It didn't officially become a reserve currency until 1944.
The problem is unity, right? Or rather disunity. France and Germany can't even agree on what we should be doing militarily in Ukraine. So the idea, and again, Brexit is relevant because...
Any different from the States?
Yeah, I think it is. For the simple reason that you haven't got a president. You haven't got it's not a pyramid of power with one person at the top who is almost omnipotent. You haven't got someone who can say, look, whether you like it or not, this is what we're doing. This is where Europe is going. This is what Europe is doing. You need agreement from, 30-odd disparate
When desperate times come around, you sometimes have to do the unthinkable.
And how confident are we that things are that desperate? I ask this more as the devil's advocate than as more in kind of curiosity than optimism. But could things now dial down again? I mean, the thing about Trump that is hardest to credit is the way in which he can go from saying absolutely hideous things about people in the hope that they will bend, and then when they bend, he pretends that they've been best friends all along.
We've had many years of Russia messing around in Africa, causing migrant crises and having migrants coming across the Channel, across the Mediterranean. We're now about to have Donald Trump clear out Gaza. So we're going to have 2.1 million Gazans heading towards Europe. Do you really think that's going to be healthy for the actual for politics in Europe?
Well, we know exactly whose hands that can play into, depending partly on how much connivance comes from the media.
We have to think the unthinkable. We have to take the far right on, and we have to actually start putting in place policies that make people feel better. And effectively, democracy is not a perfect system, but it's better than all the rest.
And the
That's
biggest
the Winston
problem,
Churchill quote.
well, I know it is, and the biggest problem with it, this is a James O'Brien quote, is that you can have a majority of people who believe things that aren't true, which brings us back to the disinformation bubble. It's probably the biggest flaw. I mean, you know your stuff, for which I'm very, very grateful. And I don't know that the signs currently are that the European leaders have the stomach or the will to undertake the scale of the response that you describe. Whether or not historians of the future look back and see that as a missed opportunity, I do not know. I mean, that's it, though. That's when normality bias kicks in, when you listen to Peter and you think, oh, things aren't that bad, are they? And then you listen to Trump and you think, oh, yes, oh, they surely are.